You can't intuitively build muscle if you've never done it before while also optimizing the process. So you can gain muscle, but you might gain a lot of fat, or you might have a bunch of plateaus on the way if you try to do it intuitively versus just getting the result you want as quick as possible. Wits and Weights community, welcome to another episode of the Wits and Weights podcast. So we are here today in our live training with the community talking about how I built 10 more pounds of muscle at the age of 43, and more specifically, the complete nutrition and training blueprint for how to do that. And if you're listening, watching, if you're watching the replay, you get a bonus guide that goes along with this that is much more detailed. And I might bring that up here in the training later on. But we're just going to dive right in and talk about these topics. Those who are live, throw your questions in the chat. And we're just going to start by answering the question, like, why would you gain weight on purpose? You know, a lot of people, it's obvious. A lot of guys especially are like, yeah, I get it. I want to gain. I want to build muscle. It makes sense. A lot of women might be fearful. Some guys are fearful. You know, there's no gender divides when it comes to a fear of gaining weight, because so many of us have spent our lives dieting, not dieting, dieting, not dieting, and kind of chasing that number on the scale, thinking that that's going to get us where we want to be for how we look, how we feel, whatever reason we're going after. However, if you just do some simple math with me here, if you weigh 150 pounds at 20% body fat, which for a male is kind of average, above average, maybe, or probably average for most men, if not a little bit less. For females, just add 10% to that. If you're 150 pounds at 20% body fat at the age of 30, and then you don't do anything the rest of your life in terms of training or nutrition, which is the majority of people, right? Most people are not resistance training. Most people don't eat enough protein, etc. And whether you gain or lose weight over time, you're going to lose 1% of your muscle every year. So after 30 years, by the time you're 60, you've now lost pounds and pounds of muscle. If, on the other hand, you start training, you start eating the right way, even if you don't gain a lot of weight, right? Even if you don't go on a muscle building phase, just to maintain your weight, you are going to at least avoid losing that muscle. And then if you do what we're talking about today and you take time to build muscle, you can add 20, 30, 40 pounds of muscle in your lifetime. For men, it's 40, maybe a little more. For women, it's like 30. That's a lot of muscle. And if you just do simple math and say, okay, I go from 150 pounds to 180 pounds of pure muscle, which implies that you've gained, maybe you've done a fat loss, you've done a fat loss over time to get there. You're going to be at a lower body fat percentage, right? So you're going to be like 16% body fat at 180 pounds. And so that's a profound thing to just let sit with your brain, that you can be 30 pounds heavier, but look leaner, look more well-muscled, get the physique you're actually going for, the shape that you're going for. Not only that, it gives you a higher metabolism. Your baseline metabolic rate's higher because muscle is more expensive, and your overall metabolism's higher because you're just carrying more weight. Everything you do takes more energy. You could push more in the gym, etc. And then that means you could eat more. And that means fat loss is easier. And that means you're not dieting all the time. You're instead energized all the time. Energy, fullness, food freedom, whenever you want. So that's what we're going for, right? Throw in the chat if that's not what you want, in which case today's session is not appropriate for you. Okay, so let's keep going. All right, so let's bulk, right? What is bulking exactly? The word itself scares some people because they don't want to get bulky, especially women I talk to, but you know, you're not going to look like Arnold. I would love to look like Arnold. It's never going to happen. Fact is, it'll never happen without steroids, but I can still, you know, look great, especially for my age, and you can too. And so bulking is just the idea of gaining weight deliberately to gain muscle. There's 4 things that drive an effective bulk. And if you miss out on any of these, it's going to be significantly less effective and lead to more fat loss, or just fits and starts. And you can see those on the screen, but they are your surplus. So that's eating more calories than you burn. Number 2 is protein, getting sufficient protein, which is the building blocks of your muscle tissue in the form of amino acids. That's protein. So we're going for around a gram per pound of body weight is the universal evidence-based standard. You can be a little bit less than that in a building phase, to be honest. You can be as low as 0.7 and be just fine. Some guys, some women love protein, love to eat meat, and they're higher than that. There's always a trade-off with fats and carbs. So being at that minimum is what's important. Number 3 is training for progressive overload. This is honestly the one that most people miss. And by miss, I mean they might be going to the gym, they might be training, but they're not doing it effectively. They're not actually progressing over time in some form of intensity, volume, sets, to actually demonstrate that they're getting stronger and putting those calories to good use building muscle. And then number 4 is recovery. A lot of people shortchange this. They're like, well, I'm eating more food, so recovery is less important. But sleep, protecting your joints, lifting in a way that allows you to get to the gym the next time so you're not excessively sore or have, achy joints or give yourself tendonitis are all important ways to continue that building phase efficiently and quickly. Just like in fat loss, we want to get it over and done. Well, in a building phase, we want to actually, pack on that muscle because we know there's fat coming along for the ride. So you kind of want to balance the two as best you can. And then I see some questions coming in the chat that I'll either answer them if they make sense or I'll hold off on them. Let's go with this one. I think I heard in a podcast, you don't recommend scales with fat percentage sensors. Why? What do you recommend? Said question for later. Okay. I'm just going to answer that because they're inaccurate. They're highly inaccurate. So whatever number they tell you, you can't believe. They could be off on any given day. However, if you take the trend over time, they tend to be much more valid. So if it says you're 22% body fat, you might be 17, you might be 27. But if it says 22 now, and then 21 the next week, and then 20 the next week, and 19 the next week, you're probably losing fat. So that's it. Okay, so the 4 drivers of the bulk, as I said, were the surplus, the protein, the training, the recovery. And then there's one more that's kind of a bonus, but a lower priority, and that's the timing of nutrients. I'm a firm believer that you shouldn't train fasted unless there's a really good reason to. And also that you can be smart about timing your carbs and protein around your workouts to give you more performance and thus more out of your training. Okay, so let's keep going here. Are we talking about the seafood diet, SEE food diet here? A lot of people, when they think of bulking, they think just eat whatever you want. You gain a bunch of weight. As long as I'm gaining weight, I'm gaining muscle. Yes and no. If you're gaining weight, you probably are gaining some muscle if you're doing the other things, but we also don't want to gain too much fat. And the first bulk I ever did was back in 2019-20 timeframe. And I did just that. I drank a bunch of whole milk. I ate a bunch of processed foods. I ate whenever I wanted. I didn't track. And I gained like 50 pounds in a few months, including a lot of muscle, but also a lot of fat. And then it took time to cut it off. I'm going to lay out the 4 different scenarios here and why I think one of them is optimal for most people. Okay. So the first one is a lean bulk. When people think lean gain, main gain, what's the other words people use? Gaintain, right? They think, okay, I'm going to gain as slowly as possible so that I don't gain any fat, but I still gain muscle. The problem with that approach is now you're just stretching out for many more months, if not years, the time it takes to build the same amount of muscle you could have built in a few months and then cut off the fat in like a month or two. The time scales don't make a lot of sense unless you're okay delaying the muscle gain because you just don't want to be in a fat loss phase ever. And that's a valid reason. If you never want to diet ever and you just want to take longer doing this process, you can do that. The second rate of gain, okay, so for those listening, the lean bulk is very barely above maintenance. So like 0.1 to 0.2% of your body weight a week in that time frame, in that range. A little bit more aggressive than that is what I would call the optimal range. And that is 0.2 to 0.3% of your body weight per week. Now, this has been held up time and again by studies, including one by Dr. Eric Helms et al. That came out in 2023. It was reviewed in mass. I had Dr. Bill Campbell on the show and he talked about it. And I think I did a whole episode on it as well. So I'm pretty confident that this rate of gain from my own experience as well is solid. And it's not that aggressive, but it's aggressive enough that you're going to see a meaningful weight gain over time. So 0.2 to 0.3% body weight per week is that sweet spot where you as an individual can probably maximize muscle and not leave much on the table, but also avoid getting too fat. Okay. However, if you're a beginner or if you're detrained and you haven't been training effectively for a while, you might want to go a little more aggressive. And this is what I call the aggressive rate of gain. And that's 0.3 to 0.5% body weight a week. And you'll see this recommended by a lot of coaches. You'll see male-centered coaches, like guys like Andy Morgan or Cody McBroom or whoever, might talk about these rates of gains, like 0.5% of your body weight a week. Yeah, you're going to gain a little more fat, but you'll definitely gain all the muscle. However, I think it's too aggressive for a late intermediate or a late novice, early intermediate, or more advanced athlete. If you're a beginner, however, I would go for that because your body is going to respond favorably to the muscle building signal and probably pack on a really good ratio of fat to muscle. And then the most aggressive rate is the dirty or dreamer bulk, right? The one that I went through before. And I don't know, maybe raise your hand if you've tried this before. It's kind of like the easiest one to do and it's fine, but you're just going to gain a ton of fat. And the only reason I would suggest doing this, either you're a beginner and you're totally cool with the fat gain. Maybe you're lean, maybe you're a skinny 22-year-old male. And it's like totally worth going after that for your first novice linear building phase. Or if you're trying to push your max lifts. So here's a very interesting thing. I used to have a theory that if I pushed the amount of weight that I gained, that the muscle would scale up because now I'm able to lift a lot more. We know that like adding tons of weight, mass moves mass, your lifts go up. Why wouldn't that translate to extra muscle? But what we find is beyond this optimal rate of gain, you're only gaining pure fat and the strength gains are not relative. They are absolute, meaning you're only gaining strength because your weight's going up. You're not actually getting stronger relative to your weight. And that makes sense because of leverages, cross-sectional area, all that. That gives you a better ability to push more force, but you're not gaining more muscle doing it. So if you're a power lifter, if you're going after competition, max lifts for that reason, strongman, whatever, yeah, maybe it worked. Maybe it makes sense for you, right? Other than that, I would go with aggressive for beginners or optimal for everyone else. All right, throw your questions in the chat if anything is not clear as we move forward. So how much should you eat? I'm going to suggest that you have two options. One is make it easy for yourself, use Macro Factor, use my code Wits and Weights for the free trial, try it out. You're going to love it. And it's going to calculate everything for you because this can get a little bit complicated. It actually gets more complicated than losing fat. Okay. And I'll explain why in a second. So if you want to do it by hand, just for fun or because you don't want to use an app and you want to make it hard on yourself, which is fine, and then update it every week based on your metabolism, this is how you would do it. First, you would find your maintenance calories. The only way to do that accurately is not a wearable, not a calculator. It's to track your food for 2 or 3 weeks while you maintain your weight as best you can. Whatever you ate on average is your metabolism. It's very hard to do by hand. So I suggest just using Macro Factor and moving past it and being efficient. But if you do it by hand, that's how you would do it. Now, once you've got your maintenance calories, let's say it's 2,500. You're going to pick a rate of gain like we just talked about. So aggressive or optimal, most likely. So we're going to say for this example, optimal at 0.3%. And then you're just going to calculate your weekly gain as your weight times the rate. So here we go. In this example, imagine you're 180 pounds and you want to gain rate at 0.3% pounds a week. 180 times 0.3% is 0.54 pounds a week. So it's about a half a pound a week, right? About a little over 2 pounds a month. So the surplus you need to eat above your maintenance calories is 0.54 pounds a week times the 2,500 calories divided by 7 days. All right. I know it's a lot of math here. So that gives you 193 calories. Now you're probably wondering, where does 2,500 come from? Okay. You've probably heard of the 3,500 calorie rule when you lose fat. A pound of adipose tissue is about 4,200 calories, and a pound of muscle tissue is about 800 something calories because it's much more dense. If you subtract the two, you get 3,500 calories. Well, when we're losing weight, we just want to lose fat. So we calculate for fat. When you're gaining muscle, you want to gain some muscle and some fat. I mean, you don't want to gain fat, but you're going to. And assuming a 50-50 ratio, right? Because this is another question you might have. I would say most people can assume 50-50 is in the ballpark of what they're going to gain. And my last 2 building phases, that's exactly what happened with me when I went at that optimal rate. If you do that and you say, okay, I'm going to take half of a pound of adipose tissue and half of a pound of muscle tissue and add them together, you get 2,500 calories, not 3,500 calories. So a lot of people might be gaining too quickly, thinking they're gaining at a certain rate when they're actually gaining more fat because of that. Okay. So the surplus you need is probably less than you think. And this is how you would calculate it. If you use Macro Factor, it does it for you and it adapts to you as it realizes that you are gaining at a slightly different ratio than 50-50. So if you gain more quickly or slower than it expected, it knows you're actually gaining a different ratio of muscle to fat and will adjust accordingly each week. Keep going here. Okay, macros are next. People wonder, how do I distribute my macros? So again, Macro Factor will do this really well for you based on the evidence, but let's start with protein. Protein is the muscle macro, right? We need it to build new tissue. We're going to aim for 0.7 to 1 gram per pound of body weight. And so in the same example we just used, if you're 180 pounds, you're going to eat 130 to 180. It's a big wide range. And if you're not already eating sufficient protein, I would say figure that out first at maintenance, understand what foods you can choose to get there. And then once that's locked down, you'll be ready to go into your building phase. For most people, I recommend eating 2 to 5 feedings a day for practical purposes. Many of you probably heard the recent study, the big meta-analysis that showed that you could even eat 100 grams of protein all at once, and your body's still going to use that effectively over time by just extending the window of muscle protein synthesis. But who wants to eat 100 grams of protein in one meal? That's the thing. So in reality, you're trying to scarf down 3,000 plus calories a day for most people. Women, it's probably less. And you don't want to feel, distended when you eat. And you want to be able to eat throughout the day and not feel hungry. So 2 to 5 feedings tends to make sense for most people. Practically speaking, there's no need to fast. Definitely no need to train fasted. And you're not trying to lose weight. So just eat. That's the thing. And for hard gainers, that's one of the problems is they come to me saying, look, I can't lose weight. How many times do you eat in a day? 3 times? Okay, that's part of the problem. Let's eat 4, 5, 6 so that you get more of an appetite. All right, fats. Fats are pretty simple. Generally for my clients, I just tell them eat what they like and the fats are going to work themselves out, especially in the gaining phase. But if you need a number, 20 to 30% of calories is in the ballpark for most people. If you come from a low carb environment where you ate a lot more fattier foods like dairy and meat and such, eggs, you can go a little higher. It's just going to eat into the carbs a bit, but you have a lot of calories to work with. So 20 to 30% is reasonable. And then the rest of the calories come from carbs. And why do we need carbs for muscle building? I'm going to say that almost 0% of the time do you want to go low carb while you're building muscle, unless there's a medical reason, like if it's related to diabetes, type 1 diabetes, particularly if you've got some sort of intolerance to like a million carb-based foods or something like that. Otherwise, I want you to experiment with your body and performance, bringing those carbs up to a decent level, which could be 2 something, 3 something, 400 something grams of carbs, which might sound crazy to a lot of you. I did a whole episode called More Muscle, More Carbs, and I got some hate on that from the people who are just anti-carb still, and I don't get it. If you do it and you try it, you'll see what it does for your lifts, for the amount of reps you can bang out in the gym, for how you sleep, for how you recover. I mean, the list goes on. And we know from the evidence, you could build 5 times as much muscle having moderate to high carbs versus a low carb or keto approach. I'm not saying you can't build muscle on keto. I'm not saying if that's not what you like, don't do it. I'm just saying if you're agnostic to it, go for the carbs. Got a comment in the chat. Let's see. Would it make a difference to eat the carbs within an hour or 2 after the workout if during the day carbs have been part of the diet intake? Nighttime's my preferred time for workouts. Within an hour or 2 after the workout, if during the day carbs have been part, would it make a difference? Oh, you're saying after. So no, not as much. That's a good point. If it's at nighttime and you want to get to sleep and you don't want your sleep interrupted by your digestion and you're working out that late, I would say experiment, number 1. But number 2, I think it's more important to get the carbs ahead of time than necessarily afterward. And then the next day, you're just going to refuel anyway. But like with any of these very specific answers, I would say experiment with yourself for like 2 weeks and see how it affects your sleep, see how it affects your recovery, and see how it affects your performance the next time in the gym. Okay. So protein, carbs around workouts. So my general recommendation is like before, within an hour or 2 after, have some protein and carbs. Have like 25, 30 grams of protein or more, and have at least a 1-to-1 or more of carbs to protein. All right. So as far as what should you eat, I don't want to spend too much time on this. When I work with clients, I don't give them meal plans. Like I want people to come up with their own meal plan based on the options available to you, based on what you like and your lifestyle and your preferences, but I'll help you figure that out. It's pretty simple. You need a lot of everything, so everything goes. Like that's the general idea here. 80, 90% whole foods is always a great approach, with the rest of it being indulgences, as opposed to 100% whole foods, which can be unsustainable, as well as hardly any whole foods, which isn't great for your health. So starting with protein, you've got you've got meat, you've got dairy, you've got plant-based proteins as well. If you're vegetarian, You have the option to go higher fat, like ribeyes instead of sirloin, like whole milk versions of dairy instead of 1 or 2%. So this is your option to add a little more flavor and pizzazz to your food. Carbs, anything goes, but like white rice and potatoes and fruits are great sources of carbs that go down pretty easy. You could add more calories if you need them in the form of olive oil, maybe a little butter. I don't like lots of butter because the saturated fat, but some butter in your stir fry and in your, rice can be delicious. Smoothies are a great way to just redigest a bunch of food. So it goes down easy if you need the calories. And then indulgences, like this is your moment. If you like the bagels and you weren't eating that during fat loss, or if you like ice cream or pizza or whatever, have it occasionally and give yourself that mental relief to say, yeah, this is a flexible approach. I love living this way, but I'm not going to do a dreamer bulk of like, candy and junk food and pizza and donuts all the time. Alcohol is the other thing I wanted to address. Alcohol is never a positive for your health, just period. It just never is. But it's a lifestyle thing and it's your choice if you enjoy it for other reasons. It does increase fat storage. It does inhibit muscle protein synthesis, and it does disrupt sleep, and it does increase your visceral fat accumulation as part of the fat that you're gaining. So if you want to avoid all those things, I would limit or replace alcohol with non-alcoholic versions. I'm a big fan of NA beer these days. There's a lot of great brands, and even non-alcoholic liquor is available. So give that a shot. Let's see. I cut out alcohol and I'm having trouble making up for the missing carbs. Okay. So I want to poke at that, Aaron, because alcohol does have some carbs. I agree, but it also has a lot of other empty calories. Let's call it. It's energy, it's alcohol, but it has to get metabolized by the body and it doesn't get used for anything other than fat storage. Missing carbs, I'm finding myself full, but still needing more calories. Any food suggestions to replace the alcohol? I mean, that's where you could have a beverage. If you're looking for a beverage, you can have a smoothie of some kind with dense foods in there. Think anything based on a nut like peanut butter. Think adding oil to foods like that, more refined carbs, which I know is like a huge no-no in some spaces, like refined. No, everything's got to be the whole or brown varieties, but like white rice, white pasta-based foods, if you're gluten tolerant, not everybody is, but if you're gluten tolerant, it's a long list. Fruit also, the more denser fruits that have a lot of calories. So what else comes to mind? If anybody else has ideas, throw them in the chat. When you go over your calorie count from indulgences, do you just take the loss? I think you're saying the loss, or do you adjust down the next day or two? Okay, that's an interesting one. If you're in a gaining phase and you go over calories, just start the next day. It's fine. Like you'll just get a little bump that day. If you're in a fat loss phase, okay, whatever phase you're in, I don't like making up, if that's the principle here. I don't like making up the calories. So I would just look at what I did, readjust the next day, come up with a better meal plan, and learn from these minor mistakes so that you continue having a flexible approach going forward. But don't ever make up for it. Dates, dried fruit. Yeah, great. Dates, dried fruit, raisins. Yeah, great options. And then supplements, creatine. I mentioned creatine here just because I think everyone would benefit. 20% of people are non-responders. The tiniest fraction of people are allergic. It's a very rare thing. I like to mention it. So if you have a weird reaction, that's why. But most people are responsive. And it's supposed to be good for brain health as well. They're finding in the evidence. Okay. So training. All right. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on training today because it's more about nutrition. I do have a lot of podcasts I've done specifically about training, but here are my principles. Okay. Spend enough time building muscles so you actually get the benefit. That's the first big one. A lot of people, they do all the training things right, but then they only spend 2 months and then they stop. So 6 months, I like 6 months. Some coaches say 4 or 5. I like 6 because it's that stretch goal and lets you think of your schedule ahead of time and plan it out with the seasons. So for me, I like to, like right now I'm in a fat loss phase, ironically, as I give this muscle building talk, but it's going to be done going into spring. And then I'm going to just bulk all the way till February. So for me, it's like 9 months. I love it. And now you're going through the fall, or the party season, the fall, you're going through holidays, all of that. So spend at least 6 months building and plan out your weight gain accordingly. Work out 3 to 5 days a week. So if you're going to build muscle, you can't be a 1 or 2 day. I mean, unless you're an advocate of low volume training and have a really good program for that, like as a powerlifter or something, most people are going to benefit from 3 to 5 days a week or 6. But I mean, 3 to 5 is usually optimal. As far as what the program should look like, there's a million. There's a million out there. I mean, you could buy ones from like Mind Pump, from Andy Baker. There's stuff on Train Heroic. There's a million programs that'll work. Principle wise, I like anywhere from 45 minutes to an hour and a half where you're doing about 4 to 6 movements you're doing about 3 to 5 sets, and they're in the 4 to 15 rep range. And I realize that's like a wide range because all of it can be effective. We're trying to build muscle. We're not going for maximal strength, but a strength-based program can still build muscle. If that makes sense. So I like a little both, which they call power building, where I'm doing like a compound lift, then I'm doing a compound lift accessory. So I might do a deadlift, then I might do like an RDL, and then I might do 2 or 3 more isolation movements. You could do body part splits, bro splits. You could do push-pull legs. You could do upper lower. You could do conjugate. The list goes on and on. You could do Texas method, heavy, light, medium. The sky's the limit. Okay. Don't use that as an excuse to prevent you from making progress. Christos says working on MAPS powerlift right now, and I'm super impressed with the results. Beautiful. It's a great one. My clients, I can give them access to all the Mind Pump programs I own. They're a big fan of coaches just kind of giving away their stuff. So if you work with me, I can give you those. Train 0 to 2 reps from failure. Proximity to failure is one of the most important principles, because if you're going into the gym, you're banging out 10 reps and you've got 5 reps in the tank, you are just not giving your muscles the stimulus they need to grow. So 0 to 2 reps from failure. Usually that means 2 reps or so on a big lift, closer to 0 reps on isolation work. Use long enough rest periods. Okay, this is another one. If you're going to the gym and constantly doing the intensity stuff with like 30 seconds rest, you may not be getting the most benefit from some of the bigger movements, where if you took the 3 minutes or even 4 minutes to rest, now you could hit all the sets and get all the effective reps. Now, conversely, intensity techniques rely on the opposite approach, deliberately shortening the rest period so that you're closer to the effective reps on the next set right away. So I just want to make sure that people are using long enough rest periods when they need them. And I wanted to mention that. Okay. Adding weight and reps every session. This is the gold here. Progressive overload, right? Something has to go up. Something. Either you bang out an extra rep, or you increase the weight, or both, or you even add a set. Whatever the programming calls for, you can't be static. If you're gaining weight in your body and you're not going up in weight in the gym, not only does that demonstrate you're not building muscle, it demonstrates you're getting weaker because your heavier body should be able to push more weight. So it has to go up. It just has to. And if it's not, something needs to be addressed. Okay. And that's a good opportunity to kind of dive in. Last but not least, pick a program you can stick with that you enjoy. That's it. Like, pick something you love. If you tell me I hate going to the gym, well, maybe that's not the right program for you, or you're just not, using one of these principles. Okay. I'm wired up today. I don't know. This stuff excites me. You guys like this stuff? Okay. Let's see. Nutrition wise, what do you think about the approach of 3 to 4 weeks on a surplus followed by 1 week on a deficit and repeating the cycle for the purpose of minimizing fat gain? I don't like it, Christos. I don't. If you were in fat loss and you took a diet break, the only thing that's going to help with is your mental state. We know that there's no physiological benefit. Same thing happens the other way around. If you're gaining muscle and then you take a break, yeah, you're not going to gain more fat, but you're not going to gain more muscle, right? Makes sense? Like, you're just slowing it down. I do like the idea, and I was going to talk about it later if I get to it, but if not, it's in the guide. I like taking a mini cut in the middle of a long building phase, potentially, to lop off some fat and then continue. But you got to be very deliberate about it. I wouldn't do it frequently. Love my energy. Good. I've been talking all day, so I'm losing my voice here. All right. Your new mantra. All right. I've got a quote up on the screen. I'm going to say it out loud for those listening. And I want you guys to kind of say this to yourself. If you're on mute now, I want to say it out loud with me, please do. I'm excited to gain weight for the first time in my life because I'm an athlete who wants to be lean and well-muscled. I'm intentionally gaining weight with a plan and will be putting all those calories to good use. I accept the fact that I'll gain some fat, but that's a small, short-term trade-off to gain so much muscle, more than I've ever gained in my life. I will focus on my lifts, how great I feel, and all the other positive things that come with gaining muscle. Okay, I think this is important. I think framing and mental state is important because you can't focus on the fact that you're gaining fat because you'll get discouraged. You just will. I did a whole episode called Why I'm Getting Fluffy Before I Get Jacked. And I have those insecurities. And I look in the mirror and I'm like, yeah, but then I realize that that's nothing for what I'm gaining out of this process. And most people just don't have the mental fortitude to even attempt it. And so you guys are all here. You're ready to go. This is step 1. Okay. As far as how do you know you're making progress? You've got to track the things that tell you you're making progress. Sounds obvious, but a lot of people will come to me like, I'm stuck and I can't gain weight. Same thing with the opposite. I'm stuck and I can't lose weight. Well, are you tracking your food? No. Okay. Track your food, right? Or, I mean, there's a million reasons why, but it often comes down to you just don't have data. And if you're going to tell me that it's too tedious, then I'm going to say, okay, then it's not as important to you as it should be. That, like, there's no way around it. You can't intuitively build muscle if you've never done it before while also optimizing the process. So you can gain muscle, but you might gain a lot of fat, or you might have a bunch of plateaus on the way if you try to do it intuitively versus just getting the result you want as quick as possible. So things that you can track your scale weight, of course, to know that you're gaining. You track your trend weight, which MacroFactor does for you. That's a 3-week moving average. You track your body measurements, not to focus on your waist because that's going to go up, but your biceps, your thighs, your chest, your neck, those should go up and indicate fat or muscle gain. You can measure your body fat using the Navy formula if you want. You definitely need to log your lifts and know that you're progressing. You can log your biofeedback. I find it's less important during gaining than losing because all the biofeedback tends to be positive. But if you track your biofeedback and you're like in a hard gaining plateau, you might notice that, hey, I'm hungry. Well, that's a good indication you're not eating enough. And then blood work's always nice to have just as a before and after. So you can track other things beyond that. If you have like an Oura Ring, an Apple Watch, all this, it's fun. Cardio, health, all that. But these are the main things. If I had to pick 2 or 3, what would they be? Well, I didn't even have food on this list, right? Because we talked about that separately. So it would be food, but then I would track your average weight and I would track, well, if I don't like these questions where you have to only pick a few, right? Right. I shouldn't have taken the bait. So I would track weight and I would track, do you have to track your training? Gosh, I feel like you have to. Yeah, weight and training. That's it. Everything else you can kind of tell by how your pants feel, by how you look, right? Your weight tells you you're putting in the calories, and your training log tells you you're getting stronger. Good. Body measurements, I like them weekly just to make it a habit. I do them on Sunday mornings and then put them in a spreadsheet. And by the way, I have a tracker for that. It's going to be part of something that's coming up that I'm going to mention in my bonus surprise at the end. So I'm not going to say it now. Okay, keep going. So don't be dumb. What holds people back? Okay. Not tracking stuff, like all the stuff we just talked about. Going too quickly or going too slowly, of course, because if you go too slowly, you're just going to stall out. And if you go too quickly, you're going to get too much fat. Not doing it for long enough, like we talked about, not training hard, not recovering, hard gaining, and staying there, meaning you know you're hard gaining and then you just don't do anything about it. Fear of getting fat, we talked about, and then letting life deter you, like making an excuse. Oh, this happened. Oh, I got injured. Oh, I had surgery. I didn't let it deter me. I know people all the time who get injured and they work around it. I know people that they have to go on a 3-week vacation. They make it work. Like you can make it work. That is life. Like that's the norm. The norm is life. So unless you know there's like 3 months where you're going to be in a cave without access to a gym, and even then you could like rig up some rocks. Well, you need food too, but anyway, don't let life deter you. Okay. We only have 20 minutes left. See this, I knew what would happen. The rest of this presentation is a walkthrough of my real life muscle building phase. Proceed with caution. Only if you truly want to unlock the most muscle gains possible and save time and hassle should you continue. And the same wording is in the guide. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to fly through this because I want to leave like 10 minutes at least to answer questions. And then everyone here is going to get these slides and they're going to get the blueprint itself that's going to explain everything. And you can always reach out to me if something doesn't make sense. Okay. So my plan was I wanted to get jacked. I want to go after as much muscle as I can. I just started training hard like 4 years ago. And I know a lot about this stuff, but I don't have the results I want yet out of it. I have great results, but I want to keep going. So I'm going to gain I did, this is over. I gained at 0.3% body weight a week. I aimed for 6 to 9 months. It ended up being 10 months, including a month of layoff in between because of life. I had surgery and I had a rapid fat loss phase that I did. And my target weight was 185. It started at 165. I later adjusted it to 190. And never lock yourself into an exact number. Be adaptable. Was I successful? This information will all be in the blueprint in even way more detail than this, where I explain everything. But was I successful? Well, I gained 11.3 pounds of lean mass and I gained 12.9 pounds of fat. If you assume there's like a pound or two of fluid in the lean mass, then the ratio is maybe slightly worse, but it's still almost 50-50. I'm happy with that. Like For a guy who's been training, 4 years, I consider myself intermediate. 50-50 is great. For a beginner, I would say a little more lean mass than that. And then for an advanced athlete, a little bit less. So my effective rate of gain was 0.48, which was almost exactly what I was going for. And all my circumference measurements went up. So my waist went up 3 inches, chest an inch, bicep inch and a half, thigh 1.7, neck half inch. And I'm very happy with that. And so body fat wise, it went up about 5%. What I know from my own personal experience is I feel leaner than I ever have at 190. I mean, now I'm like 183 because I'm in a fat loss phase. I'm going back the other direction. But you will find that every time you gain, every time you cut the fat, you're able to go higher and higher and higher in weight, but still feel leaner. It's a great thing. Okay. My metabolism was all over the place. This is why you should use MacroFactor, to be honest, because there's no other way to do this easily. My metabolism, if you look where it started, when I started gaining, it actually went down. Then it kind of stayed around. Then I had rotator cuff surgery, and then it shot way up as my shoulder healed itself. It shot up by 200 or 300 calories. I couldn't train I couldn't train at all after the surgery. And then I had to slowly get back into it. I didn't let life deter me. I kept working on it. I went to maintenance. Then I went back into a gain, and my metabolism actually kept dropping this whole time. Not sure why. Like, my activity was fine, but I think it was just because I wasn't training hard during this period. And then we had our Shred-tober rapid fat loss phase for 14 days. My expenditure dropped even more. Then I started building again. And ever since then, it climbed back to a reasonable level. Now, in previous building phases, I've been up to like 3,400 calories. So I ended this one around 3,100. And this just tells you that our bodies can, be unpredictable, is what it says. But it does give us good information of like what happens in different phases. And when somebody asks me, should I stop tracking because I'm sick or because I'm this or that, assuming the tracking itself isn't a stressor or a problem, I say, yeah, keep tracking because it gives you information on what your body does during these anomalies. Okay, so that's my metabolism. My trend weight went up from about 168 to 190. And you can see that it was pretty smooth, even though the scale weight goes up and down constantly, but the trend weight kept going. And I had surgery. I lost weight, a little bit of weight, because my metabolism shot up, as you saw on the last slide. So I went into what amounted to a hard gainer phase unintentionally. I actually ate more and more and more, but I couldn't keep up. And then finally it turned around and I started to gain again. Then I had the rapid fat loss phase where I lost about 4 pounds of body fat, which was cool. And that's an example where you, like to Christos's question, you could use a mini cut or micro cut in the middle of a phase to help you extend it. And then I continued from there, and it was smooth sailing pretty much for the rest of the build. If you look at my nutrition, I'm pretty consistent. I'm pretty boring. People who are boring tend to be successful with this stuff because they just eat the same things and are just dialed in. Not everybody's like that, and you can still get great success even if you have more variance. You have to be consistent, but you can have more variability. So if you look at my graph here, my protein, fats, carbs pretty much stayed where they needed to be the whole time. And you can see the nutrition trended with my expenditure. So it went up and down, every week, depending on what I needed to keep the surplus the same. And then all these spikes are just like parties or nights out, or I was like, yeah, I just want to eat what I want today, which you have a lot more flexibility to do that in a building phase. The blue that doesn't have a color is probably alcohol. So occasionally I drink. I rarely drink these days, maybe once every few weeks, but that's what those are. Okay. Measurements, I already mentioned that they went up. I'm not going to dwell on this. This is all my waist went up as I gained fat, and then my chest, biceps, and thighs all went up as I gained muscle. So I was happy with that. And you should be too if you see things going in that direction. My body fat went up as expected by about 4 or 5%. This is based on the Navy formula, which uses my neck and waist. So it's a simple ratio, a little bit complicated formula. You can put it in a spreadsheet or you can Google it and you can track the trend. I don't care about the number. I care about the trend. Now, at my leanest, when I started at weighing 168, I was about 16% body fat, which you might say, well, that's not even that lean. And I agree. And so my fat loss phase now, my intent is to get closer to 10%, which I've just never been there my entire life. I've always been a bit fluffy or overweight. And that's why I love shaping my body this way. Okay. Any other questions? Cool. Well, thanks everybody for coming. Again, I will send out everything by email. If you don't get that, you could always reach out to me, Philip with 1 L at witsandweights.com or Instagram at witsandweights or our Facebook group or everywhere else. So thanks all for coming.